Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to share and subscribe the channel. Daniel was exhausted. The long hike through the dense forest had taken its toll, and the setting sun was a welcome sight as it painted the sky with shades of orange and pink. He had found the perfect spot beside a small clearing where the ground was soft enough for a restful sleep. There, nestled beneath a blanket of towering trees, he unpacked his gear, setting up his camp for the night. The forest was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that seemed to swallow all sounds. The wind barely moved through the branches above, and the occasional chirp of an insect was a distant, almost imperceptible hum. It was the kind of silence that felt oddly soothing, almost as if the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting for something. He had planned this solo camping trip for weeks, seeking a break from the chaos of everyday life. With no phones, no distractions, just the simplicity of nature, he could finally unwind. The idea of being alone in the woods for a few days, with nothing but the sound of rustling leaves to keep him company, was exactly what he needed. After a quick dinner by the fire, he spread out his sleeping bag, unrolling it with the soft, familiar swish of fabric. He set his lantern aside and kicked off his boots, feeling the cool earth beneath his feet. The gentle crackling of the fire was the only sound now, and it had a rhythmic quality that made his eyelids heavy. He lay down on his back, staring up at the open sky through the gaps in the canopy, watching as the first stars began to twinkle. The weight of the day's hike began to fade as he curled up inside his sleeping bag, the warmth enveloping him. For a moment, he let out a deep breath, his body relaxing completely. The fire's glow flickered in the distance, and the sounds of the forest, the occasional snap of a twig, the rustle of leaves, seemed far away, almost dreamlike. It was peaceful, and that peace was exactly what he had come here for. With a content sigh, Daniel pulled the zipper of his sleeping bag all the way up, leaving only his face exposed. He closed his eyes, letting the quiet stillness lull him into a sense of comfort, his mind wandering through thoughts of the week ahead. He was alone, but that felt more like a luxury than a burden. There was no one here to disturb him, no one to talk to, and nothing to worry about, just the forest and him. As he started to drift off, the world around him seemed to fade into a gentle haze. His mind was still calm, but somewhere deep inside, a small voice whispered that something was amiss. Daniel brushed it off, thinking it was just the exhaustion creeping up on him. He had no reason to worry. There was no one else around for miles, and the only sounds were those of the forest in its natural rhythm. Nothing could disturb his peace. But then, just as he was on the edge of sleep, he heard it, a faint, almost inaudible sound. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't the trees. It was something else, something soft, almost like a whisper. Daniel's brow furrowed slightly, and he strained his ears, trying to pinpoint the source of the sound, but there was nothing. The forest was silent once again. Confused, he dismissed it as a trick of the wind or his imagination. After all, it had been a long day, and the stress of the hike had clearly caught up with him. He was just hearing things. Slowly, his muscles relaxed again, and he sank deeper into the warmth of the sleeping bag. But then it came again, louder this time, clearer, a whisper, a soft, breathy sound that seemed to come from right beside him. Daniel. The voice was unmistakable. His eyes snapped open wide with shock. For a moment, his heart raced in his chest, and he sat up in the bag, his mind spinning. There was no one around. He was alone, just like he'd been all day. But that voice, had he imagined it, or was something else in the woods with him? A chill ran down his spine as he instinctively looked around, his gaze darting across the darkened forest. The trees loomed like silent sentinels, their branches swaying slightly in the breeze. There was no sign of life, no movement, just the quiet expanse of forest. The fire still crackled faintly in the distance, but otherwise, the night seemed unnaturally still. Daniel's breath came in shallow, fast bursts. His instincts told him to get up, to pack his things, and leave. But something held him in place. Fear gripped him, yet his curiosity tugged at him just as strongly. What was that sound? Was it just my mind playing tricks on me, or was there something more to it? He wondered. He remained still, listening intently, but there was nothing, just the sound of the wind, the occasional rustle of leaves. His heart slowly returned to its normal rhythm, and he tried to settle down again, telling himself it had been nothing. Maybe an animal, or just the night playing tricks on him. He closed his eyes once more, determined to get some rest. But the whisper, now more distinct than ever, lingered in his mind. Daniel lay in his sleeping bag, his heart still pounding in his chest. The whisper from earlier wouldn't leave his mind. It was so real, so vivid that it felt like it was still echoing in his ears. He kept his eyes closed, trying to force himself to relax. But every rustling leaf, every snap of a twig, made him jump. The peace he had once found in the stillness of the forest now felt like an ominous weight pressing down on him. Minutes passed. His breathing slowed, and he tried to convince himself that it was just his imagination. The forest was full of strange noises, things he hadn't heard before, things that could easily be explained away, animals moving through the underbrush, branches swaying in the breeze. There was nothing out of the ordinary, nothing that would explain the voice he'd heard. But then, as if the night itself was holding its breath, the whisper came again. Daniel. It was closer this time, too close. It felt as though the voice was right beside his ear. The warmth of someone's breath tickled his skin, sending a shiver down his spine. He bolted upright, his heart racing once more, his mind spun. Who or what was out there? His thoughts were a whirlwind, a jumble of confusion and fear. He looked around again, his eyes scanning the dark forest with growing dread. Nothing, just shadows and trees stretching into the distance. But the feeling, the presence, was undeniable. It was as if the very air around him had thickened, charged with an energy he couldn't explain. He felt his skin prickle with a strange sensation, like being watched. And for a moment, he thought he saw movement out of the corner of his eye. The trees were swaying, but this time it wasn't just the wind. It was deliberate, as if something was causing the branches to bend and shift in a way that felt unnatural. His instincts screamed at him to run, to leave the forest behind and never look back, but something deep within kept him frozen in place. The voice came again, and this time, Daniel couldn't ignore it. Don't be afraid. Orn, it whispered, soft and soothing like a lullaby meant to calm a frightened child. But there was something more to it, something he couldn't place. The voice wasn't human, not in the way he knew. It wasn't even earthly. It was like a sound he had never heard before, a sound that stirred something deep within him. Who are you? Daniel's voice trembled as he spoke, breaking the silence of the night. He couldn't believe he was talking to the air, to a voice that had no source. But the words escaped him before he could stop them. For a long moment, the forest fell completely silent. Not a single rustle of a leaf, not a single chirp of an insect. Daniel's breathing was the only sound, loud in his ears. His body was tense, every muscle coiled in anticipation, waiting for an answer. Then the voice spoke again, but this time it was clearer, more distinct. I'm not from here, Daniel. I've been watching you. The words were soft but filled with an otherworldly sense of calm. There was no malice in them, no anger, only a quiet, steady assurance. Daniel's mind raced. He had been alone in this forest for hours. The thought of someone or something watching him sent another wave of fear crashing over him. But at the same time, he felt an odd sense of curiosity stirring in his chest. Why? He whispered, his voice barely audible. Why are you here? Why are you talking to me? The answer came slowly, deliberately, as if the voice was choosing its words carefully. You are not just an ordinary man, Daniel. You are meant to understand things beyond this world. I'm here to show you what lies beyond the stars, beyond everything you know. Daniel's mind spun. What was this? Was he dreaming? Was he hallucinating? The rational part of his brain screamed at him to wake up, to shake off whatever was causing him to hear these things. But the other part of him, the part that had always been fascinated by the unknown, wanted to hear more. He wanted to know what this voice, this presence, had to say. Before he could speak, the air around him seemed to shift again. The temperature dropped, and he felt a sudden chill that had nothing to do with the forest night. It wasn't just cold. It was unnatural. It was as though something had reached into the very fabric of the world and twisted it, bending the air around him in strange and inexplicable ways. And then something shifted in the darkness, a glow, faint at first but growing brighter. The air seemed to hum with energy, as if the very atmosphere had come alive. Daniel's eyes widened as he watched, transfixed, the glow becoming more intense. And then, like smoke dissipating into the night, the figure appeared, a figure that had no earthly explanation. Daniel's mouth went dry as the figure slowly materialized in front of him. It was not a person, not in any way he recognized. Its form was sleek and translucent, a soft, ethereal glow that seemed to pulse with an energy he couldn't comprehend. The figure's eyes, large, dark, and shimmering, locked onto his, and for a moment, Daniel could do nothing but stare, paralyzed by the sight. The figure's presence felt like nothing he had ever experienced. It was calm, gentle, yet at the same time, it held an undeniable power. The air around them seemed to vibrate with something ancient, something vast. And as the figure spoke, Daniel felt as though the very fabric of reality itself had shifted. "I am from a place far beyond this world, Daniel. And you, too, are not as you seem." The figure before Daniel shimmered in the moonlight, its form shifting like mist in a gentle breeze. It seemed to float rather than walk, its movements smooth and effortless, as if it wasn't entirely bound by the physical laws that governed everything else. Daniel's breath caught in his throat, his body frozen in disbelief. His mind raced, trying to process what was happening. But the more he tried to make sense of it, the more impossible everything seemed. The creature's eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, deeper than any human eyes could be. Its gaze was penetrating, yet it wasn't threatening. There was no malice in those eyes, only a quiet intensity that spoke of knowledge far beyond anything Daniel could imagine. It was as if this being had seen the entire universe, from the beginning of time to the end of it, and now stood before him to reveal truths that humans were never meant to know. "I know what you are thinking," the figure spoke again, its voice echoing through Daniel's mind rather than through the air. It wasn't a voice in the conventional sense. It was more like a presence, a vibration that resonated directly within his thoughts. "You wonder if this is real. You wonder if you're dreaming or if you've lost your mind." Daniel opened his mouth to speak, to ask questions, but no words came. His mind was full, overwhelmed with the flood of sensations that were invading his senses. He could feel the ground beneath him, the cool air that brushed against his skin. But none of it seemed tangible anymore. His reality was unraveling before him, slipping away like sand through his fingers. The alien's form flickered again, and then, just as quickly as it had appeared, it was gone. The glow faded, and for a moment, Daniel was left in total darkness, unsure of what had just happened. Was it real? Had it all been a figment of his imagination? But then a soft voice, no, more like a feeling, brushed against his consciousness. "You are ready, Daniel." The words filled his mind, but they didn't come in a spoken language. They were understood instinctively, like an ancient memory being unlocked. The air shifted again, warmer now, almost comforting. The tension that had gripped Daniel's chest began to loosen, though fear still lingered in his veins, reminding him of how surreal everything felt. "I've been waiting for you," the voice continued, "waiting for you to see beyond the surface, to understand what lies hidden in the cosmos." Daniel felt a strange pull toward the figure, like an invisible force drawing him in. Without even thinking, he stood up, moving toward the spot where the creature had been. His feet barely touched the ground as he walked, his legs heavy but moving on their own, guided by something beyond his comprehension. He wasn't sure what was happening, but there was a sense of inevitability about it, as though he had no choice but to follow the path laid before him. The forest around him had changed. The trees, once dark and imposing, now seemed distant, fading into the background as if the world itself had been rewritten. The night sky stretched out above him, vast and endless. And for the first time in his life, Daniel felt small, insignificant in the face of everything that surrounded him. The stars above seemed closer now, almost within reach, like he could touch them if he only tried. The figure reappeared, this time standing directly in front of him, its form radiating a soft, ethereal light that filled the space around them. The being looked at him, its expression unreadable but not unkind. The gaze, though otherworldly, was filled with something Daniel had never experienced before, a profound sense of understanding, as though it could see deep inside him, beyond the surface, to the core of who he truly was. "You have always been connected to the stars," the figure said, its voice now clearer, more resonant. "You've just never known it." Daniel opened his mouth, but still no words came out. His mind was racing again, his pulse quickened. But the fear had now transformed into something else, something close to awe. This wasn't a nightmare. This was real. Or at least it felt real. The figure stepped closer, its presence overwhelming yet calming at the same time. "Who are you?" Daniel finally managed to whisper. The creature tilted its head as if considering the question carefully. "I am many things. I am not one, not two, but part of something far greater. You can call me Zur if you wish, though that is not my true name. It is simply a word you can understand." Zur's voice seemed to vibrate through the air, touching Daniel's very soul. "But what you should understand, Daniel, is that you are not alone in this universe. You are never alone. You are part of something much bigger than yourself, something that connects all life." Daniel's heart thudded in his chest as he processed the words. They felt true, but they also felt impossible. How could this being know so much? How could it know him so well? Zur reached out its hand, almost delicate, as it extended toward Daniel, its fingers glowing faintly. There was an undeniable pull in the air, and Daniel felt the urge to take its hand. But his hesitation remained, uncertainty still lingering in the back of his mind. "Come," Zur said softly. "There is much for you to learn, much to understand. You've already begun your journey, Daniel. You found your way here, but the true path lies ahead." Daniel stood there for a moment, staring at the being in front of him. He could feel the weight of its words, the truth behind them. And for the first time, he wondered if the world he had always known was only a fraction of what existed. Was he truly ready to step into the unknown, to accept the reality that the universe held secrets beyond anything he had ever imagined? Daniel's mind raced as the figure Zur held its hand out before him, the glowing fingers pulsing softly in the dim light of the forest. Every instinct within him screamed to pull back, to retreat into the familiar world of logic and reason. But there was something more, something powerful in the air around him that made it impossible to move away. It wasn't fear that gripped him anymore. It was an overwhelming curiosity, a hunger for answers that he could no longer deny. The quiet hum of the night seemed to fade completely as Daniel stood frozen in place, staring at the alien being before him. The air felt thick, charged with energy. The fire he had left behind crackled faintly in the distance, but it seemed far away now, irrelevant in the face of this encounter. The forest itself appeared to hold its breath, as though the entire world was waiting for Daniel to make his choice. Zur's eyes glowed brighter, its gaze steady and knowing. "Do you understand, Daniel? You have the power to see things, to learn things that no human has ever known. But it requires a choice, a decision to move beyond what you know, to leave behind the safety of your world." Daniel's heart beat faster. His legs felt heavy, as though they were rooted to the earth, unwilling to take the step forward. He wanted to speak, to ask questions. But the words felt trapped in his throat. How could he make such a choice? The world he knew was so familiar, so safe. It was easy to fall into the rhythm of everyday life, to live with the certainty that he understood the rules of reality. But this was different. This was beyond everything he had ever imagined. A sense of clarity began to wash over him, a slow understanding creeping into his thoughts. It was like pieces of a puzzle slowly clicking into place. Though he still couldn't see the full picture, Zer wasn't just talking about the physical world. This was about perception, about opening his mind to the unseen forces that shaped existence. It was about something more than what humans could touch and feel. It was about the deeper connections that bound everything together. "Why me?" Daniel asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. He still didn't understand why he, of all people, was chosen for this. Why had Zer appeared to him, of all people in the world? What made him special? Zer paused, and for the first time Daniel saw something akin to empathy in the creature's eyes, a softness in its otherwise stoic expression. "You have always been part of this, Daniel. You just didn't know it. Your entire life you've been moving toward this moment without even realizing it. Your path, your choices, they've all led you here. You were never truly alone. Not in the way you thought." Daniel felt his chest tighten. It was hard to fathom. His life had felt so ordinary, so insignificant compared to the enormity of what Zer was describing. But now, in the presence of this being, everything seemed to have meaning. Every choice, every step, every moment, it was all connected to something greater than he had ever imagined. "What am I supposed to do next?" Daniel asked, the weight of the question heavy on his shoulders. Zer didn't answer immediately. Instead, it slowly lifted its hand toward the sky, pointing at the stars above. The glow of its form brightened, and Daniel watched in awe as the stars began to shimmer, their light shifting in ways he had never seen before. It was as if the sky itself was alive, responding to the alien's presence. "The first step is understanding," Zer said softly, its voice carrying a quiet urgency. "The first step is realizing that you are part of something much bigger. Only when you understand that will you truly be able to see what's hidden in the universe. Only then will you know what you are meant to do." Daniel followed Zer's gaze to the sky, his mind still reeling from everything that had happened. The stars seemed closer now, as if they were within his reach, a part of him. He had always looked up at them in wonder, but now they seemed to be offering something more. They seemed to be waiting for him, beckoning him to understand the deeper truths that lay beyond his world. For the first time, Daniel felt something shift inside him, like a key turning in a lock. The fear, the uncertainty, the questions, all of it seemed to fade, replaced by a strange sense of peace. It wasn't a certainty he could grasp with his mind, but it was something deeper, something that resonated in his soul. This was only the beginning. His journey, whatever it was, had just started. Daniel stood there, staring up at the vast sky, the stars now seeming like distant beacons calling out to him in a way that felt both familiar and new. Zer's words echoed in his mind, reverberating like a low hum, and for a moment he felt the weight of the universe itself pressing upon his chest. Everything that had ever mattered to him, the people, the experiences, the seemingly insignificant moments, suddenly felt connected, woven into something much larger than he could comprehend. He shifted his gaze back to the alien being before him. The ethereal glow now enveloped Zer's form, almost as if the creature were part of the very air itself. The light surrounding it pulsed gently, matching the rhythm of Daniel's racing heart. The fear that had gripped him earlier had faded, replaced by an undeniable sense of wonder and anticipation. What did it all mean? What was his role in this grand puzzle? Zer's eyes seemed to soften as it looked at Daniel, its expression serene but filled with an ancient wisdom that transcended any language Daniel had ever known. It took a step forward, the air shifting with each movement, as though the space itself bent to its will. "You are at the threshold," Zer spoke again, the voice resonating in Daniel's mind. "What lies ahead is a journey of discovery, a path that will challenge your understanding of everything you thought you knew. But it will also reveal truths that will shape your future and the future of all who share this world with you." Daniel swallowed hard, his throat dry. He could feel the weight of Zer's words settling deep within him, their meaning sinking in like a stone in water. He was standing on the edge of something monumental, something that would change everything. But the uncertainty of what lay ahead still held him in its grip. Could I handle this? Could I bear the knowledge that would inevitably come? Will I be able to go back? Daniel asked, the question slipping from his lips before he could stop it. He wasn't sure why he'd asked it. Maybe it was the lingering doubt, the fear of what this journey would demand from him. He had always been in control of his own life, always made his own decisions. But now everything felt out of his hands. Zur's gaze softened even further, the understanding in its eyes palpable. It stepped closer, and Daniel could almost feel the weight of its presence wrapping around him, reassuring him. You will always have the choice to return, Zur said. But remember, once you see the truth, you can never go back to the way things were. You will see the world differently. The veil will be lifted from your eyes, and the reality you once knew will seem small. The creature's words sent a chill down Daniel's spine. The idea of never returning to his old life, of never seeing things the way he once had, was both exhilarating and terrifying. But at the same time, something deep within him stirred, a deep yearning to know more, to understand the mysteries that lay beyond. For the first time in his life, Daniel felt like he had truly begun to understand something beyond the confines of his own world, the stars above, the infinite expanse of space, the connections between all living things. He now knew that he was part of something much larger, something so vast it could never truly be grasped by the limited perception of humanity. And yet, somehow, here he was, standing on the threshold of that understanding. You have questions, I can see them, Zur continued, its voice gentle, almost compassionate. But know this, the answers you seek are not to be found in the places you have already looked. You must search beyond, into the spaces that lie between the stars, into the folds of time itself. There you will find the truth. You will find the knowledge you need. Daniel's mind was a whirl of thoughts, a maze of questions he didn't know how to articulate. But despite the overwhelming sense of awe, there was also a clarity he hadn't known before. It wasn't as if he had all the answers now, but he felt as though a veil had been lifted from his eyes. He could see the possibilities, the endless paths that stretched out before him, each one leading to a new discovery. Zur stepped back slightly, its form glowing even brighter now, almost as if it were merging with the very atmosphere around them. The choice is yours, Daniel. The journey is yours to make, but know that once you step forward, you will no longer walk the same path as everyone else. You will leave the known behind and enter a world of wonders and challenges. It will be unlike anything you can imagine, but it will be the most important journey you will ever take. Daniel nodded slowly, the weight of Zur's words settling deep within him. He felt the pull, a call that came not just from the creature before him, but from something even greater, something that was part of the universe itself, a force that resonated with the core of his being. It was an invitation, a promise of something beyond the ordinary, a chance to witness the extraordinary. As the glow around Zur began to fade, the creature stepped back, its form starting to dissolve into the air, blending with the night. But before it completely vanished, it spoke one final time, its voice lingering in the air like a whisper on the wind. You are ready, Daniel. The universe is waiting for you. With that, Zur's form disappeared, leaving Daniel standing alone in the quiet forest, the stars above him brighter than ever before. He felt different now, changed, as though something deep within him had been awakened. The path ahead was unclear, shrouded in mystery. But for the first time, Daniel felt that he was exactly where he was meant to be. The universe had called him, and now there was no turning back.